wanted to ask you specifically about where you think points are going to come from for Iowa and how you think they're going to try and approach this game offensively. Obviously, that's been an issue all season long, but you're going to have to score. And, whether that is on special teams or on defense, where do you think the point of emphasis is going to be on offense to get some points in this game?
Well, what I think it will be and what I hope it will be are two probably different things. And frankly, Nelson, I said it earlier in the show, I hope they throw the kitchen sink at Michigan. And part of the reason why I say that, not just because this is the Big Ten championship game and this is Michigan, this is the a college football playoff team. They're facing a team that beat them by 40 a couple of years ago in this game, a team that beat them at home last year. But frankly, I look at this game and I'm thinking, it's Brian Ferentz's last chance in a big time game. Now, if they win, maybe they get a chance. I get a chance in New Year's Six Bowl if it's not the playoff. But this is likely his last chance in a Big Ten setting against and on the national stage on Fox to go out, guns a-blazing. And, he's had games a la 2017 against Ohio State, 2019 against USC down at the Holiday Bowl where things have clicked and it's worked. And this is a different team than it was in 17, different team than it was in 19. But if Brian can somehow pull a few rabbits out of his hat, whatever that looks like, whether it be a flea flicker or maybe it's a halfback pass, not to a fullback like Iowa did in 2021 that didn't work against Michigan. I don't know. I mean, they don't have the Wildcat option now without Cooper DeJean. Do they have someone else on the roster that could run that? They ran a lot of Wildcat back in 2020, which was odd. They've kind of abandoned it. I talked earlier about special teams plays. There was a stretch between 2017 and 2019 where Iowa was extremely successful on what I would call exotic special teams plays, fake punts, fake field goals, etc. So, throw your best plays out there based on what you see on film against Michigan. And, I don't know that he'll do that. I think the most likely scenario for Iowa to actually win this game, Nelson, is Iowa control the field like they do against everybody. If you can generate a couple of first downs on that initial offensive drive, pin Michigan back. The question is, can you actually pin that offense back, especially without Cooper DeJean in the backfield? I don't know. If they can do that and control the field throughout the game, they got a shot because this is what they do every week. I just don't know that they're going to be able to keep Michigan in check.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, especially if you look at Michigan's offense, I think, a lot of people will look at the Penn State game and say they've run the ball this year. They're a running, run first team. If you look at, the grand scheme of things of the way that Michigan's offense has been working, it hasn't been on the ground. I mean, it's been a pretty balanced attack. And the thing that's gotten them through is great situational passing offense. I mean, that has gotten that's exactly why they won against Ohio State. They were able to complete passes and make plays when they had to win the running game, which was frankly okay, against Ohio State. And most of the time it wasn't great. They were getting 2-3 yard carries. But then every once in a while you have Blake Corum break off that 20-yard run. And it's been a lot of that this season. So I look at what Michigan's done offensively, and I think Iowa has a chance in what you're saying here, playing the field position, pinning them back, limiting what they can do. If you're able to, you've got a great punter at Iowa. If you're able to pin them deep and force them to run the ball in these situations with their back close to the goal line, you get a couple points on your own side of things on offense, and you can pin them back. Well, then, hey, okay, maybe you have a chance because now you're sort of making them one-dimensional. And then you're forcing McCarthy to throw, which I don't think would be, I don't think it'll work out great, but that's an option. And that is the option, I think, going into this game. Now, special teams I thought was going to be a bigger issue for Michigan. Against Ohio State, it was not. James Turner, I thought might be somewhat of a liability based on his performance this season, was very average. And he stepped up, and he had a great game, Big Ten special teams player of the week. Punting game was terrific. And so the phase of Michigan's team that I thought they might struggle in, bringing two newcomers in at punter and kicker, they go out and play against Ohio State and play maybe their best games of the season. And so now that team's even more well-rounded than I originally had thought. And it does make it that much harder for Iowa. And I do think Michigan wins big in this game, but hey, there is always the chance, and I will never eliminate that, that sliver of hope. If you're a Hawkeye fan, or if you're, a Rutgers fan going into that game, or Indiana, or whoever it is that you're playing, because this is college football, and anything can happen.
Well, I'll say this, Nelson. You brought up punting. I know a lot of college football fans want to make fun of Iowa for the whole punting is winning moniker. I don't like that, by the way. I don't like the T-shirts punting is winning. I think it's great for Tory Taylor and the Children's Hospital. There's funds raised for the hospital. But frankly, they struggled special teams against Nebraska. I mean, they managed to win a game with poor place kicking, average punting, no Cooper DeJean. Their two best tight ends were done. Again, on the road in a rivalry against a team that beat them a year ago. So a lot of moxie to get through that game against, a mediocre Nebraska team, an improved Nebraska team, certainly from a year back. But I think indoors, Iowa should be able to recover some of that kicking advantage that they typically have, whether it be the punt game or the place kicking duties. Drew Stevens, I can tell you, on good authority, Drew Stevens is dealing with a groin issue. They expect him to be back. He is planning on kicking this week. But Marshall Meter finished the game last week with that game-winning field goal against Nebraska. So, they need Stevens. Meter, I don't think Meter's the answer at Lucas Oil. But if you can kick effectively, no wind. So Tory Taylor should be able to, there should be an advantage for offense and for kicking on Saturday. You've got to win special teams. Ideally, you have to win the defense versus Michigan's offense battle. That's clearly going to be hard to do. Not as hard as it's going to be for Iowa's offense to beat Michigan's defense, but you got to figure out a way to at least break even on defense against their offense, and then hopefully dominate special teams wise. And hope you get a bounce here or there. If you can create explosive plays change everything. If you can create a super explosive or an explosive play early and get up and play with the lead, it changes the game. But I don't expect Iowa, especially when they have to abandon the run, to be able to come from behind against anybody with a pulse on offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough ask. And Iowa's running game has been what they can lean on offense. I wouldn't say it statistically has been great, but it has been that reliable, hey, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, like we're going to get it. That's how we're going to get it done sort of thing. Offensively, I agree. It will be tough. If you look on the Michigan side of things, and a lot of Michigan fans thinking of this game as a shoo-in, maybe rightfully so. But there's also the component of we got to stay healthy, and you can't play bad in this game. You have to play sharp because you're about to go play in the college football playoff more than likely. And even with a loss, I mean, the shot is still there, very, very slim, I'd say, with a loss. So, you look at a guy like Donovan Edwards, who just hasn't been there this season the way that he was last year. Had a great Big Ten championship game, had a great game against Ohio State last year. Even in 2021, threw a huge touchdown pass in the Big Ten championship game, threw a pass this past weekend against Ohio State. He hasn't quite done the things that he's been able to do in the past this season. So, Michigan's explosive running game hasn't been there really in the same way. And that goes back to what I was talking about. So what that brings up for me is getting right before the playoff. If you're a Michigan fan, and if you're a Michigan player, maybe even, you have to, maintain the focus on playing well and expecting a good product against a very good Iowa team, a team that's going to take advantage of your mistakes. Doing the same thing Michigan did to Ohio State is you just play well enough and you take advantage of the mistakes that they're making and you make the right decisions in the right situations. And that's always a winning formula. And you see it. I mean, in the NFL, you look at the Steelers, I think is a great example, another black and gold team, compare them to Iowa. It's like, hey, the offense is not there, but they're playing well enough on defense, well enough in special teams, and they're winning games. They're finding a way to win games. And I think that's what, you have to expect Iowa to do. And Michigan's going to, have a different perspective, different mindset. So if they get stunned early, I am curious to see what happens.
Nelson, tell us what you got going on over at Maize and Blue Review. I'm sure it's a very busy week for you guys over at Rivals. Talk a little bit about your pregame coverage.
Yeah, so me personally, I do a couple stories a week that are previews, so to speak, for the game specifically. I do a couple articles breaking down some players that I think you should watch going into this game, whether it's a storyline, narrative, or just who I think is going to have a big impact. So those will be out, one tomorrow, one Thursday. I also do a weekly roundup on the commitments for Michigan to see what some of the commits are doing. They still got some guys playing in the playoffs here at the high school level, 2024, 2025 recruits. So that came out today. I do this thing called a look around the Big Ten. Today was a farewell of sorts to the conference. A little bit of a definitely bittersweet to say the least, maybe just bitter farewell because of the way college football is moving through realignment in the Big Ten, bringing in 4 schools from the Pac. So that's all, that's all something that I go out every week with. Big Ten power rankings will come out Friday morning. I break down, exactly, the movements that I've had throughout the season and why I think those are there. I think that is one of my more fun things to do because I get to pick apart the entire conference. Same thing with the look around the Big Ten, that weekly article that I do. I love just destroying some of the bad performances. I have those who impressed, those who disappointed section in both those stories, and I love to just break down some of the great players who surprised and some of the guys who really just let everyone down, which I think Ryan Day, maybe if you're an Ohio State fan for sure, but across the Big Ten, for those who are mad at Michigan right now, and rightfully so, is a guy that let a lot of people down this weekend.